Chapter 13. Blinking, Mira tried to keep her eyes open. It was late. Or early. She couldn't be sure anymore. Beside her, Thorgrim slept, his body motionless, like a rock in the dark. Beneath her, underneath the shut door, was the small little flame she'd befriended. Well, friends wasn't quite the right word. It had clearly been shut up alone for far too long, but she couldn't be sure what it did, or how it did it, or if it truly even understood everything she said. And a part of her wasn't sure she wanted a friendship with it or these people she'd fallen in with. She'd been alone for a long time now, and she liked it that way. People were nice for a little while, but they grew attached, and Mira didn't want to be attached. Not again. But every time she thought that, she saw the look in Saria's eyes when she'd offered the elf a room to share, the same unsure reaction to possible attachments, and the same weary acceptance. Then the same slow relax as they discovered no one was going to try to pry too much, and they could do something useful before they moved on. Had Saria been through something similar, or was she someone else entirely? And Thorgrim, why was he wandering when his kind usually became priests in towns like this? What had stopped him from settling somewhere? She met travelers and adventurers before, of course, but none of them had been quite as guarded as these few. Yet equally, these few were far easier to get along with. It was common for her to laugh, but not to truly enjoy whatever had caused the mirth, until Saria had made a joke that morning, teasing Thorgrim about the priestess' request for him to stay at the temple. Thorgrim had blushed, and Mira had laughed in a way that hadn't happened in a long time. And then they'd found this silly flame, this zipping, dangerous, emotional fireball, and it seemed to like her, another of her kind, trapped and alone. Instantly she felt drawn to it. Even now, as she stood on the surface, she wanted to open that door, to go inside and talk to it, to soothe her with words much in the way she remembered her mother doing to her. No. Her refusal to think about that topic screamed in her head. No, she couldn't think about her family. Not here. Not now. It wouldn't do her any good. She couldn't bring any of them back. They were gone for good. Dwelling on it only turned her into a monster. Immediately, the memory of a burning village filled her head. She had not killed anyone directly, but she had wrecked so many lives. Sighing and trying to think of anything but those memories, Mira stomped to the entrance of the tent and looked out once more. The snow was still falling, seeming to be an endless stream, but it wasn't so heavy anymore, and everything around was once more the pristine white that fresh snow always brought with it, even in the dark of night. A wolf howled in the distance, nature stirring along with it. Feeling peaceful in the scene for a moment, Mira wished she could stay in more serene moments like that instead, but the memories always came back eventually, and she could only think of one way to make them go away, to use her fire to help others. Wondering if Saria and the two men were safe, Mira decided to give a quick patrol-style walk around the hut and tent. She had no way of knowing if anything had happened outside the seclusion of the stretched-out canvas, and she didn't like how it made her feel. Already, she worried about them, and Saria especially. Had they walked right into the middle of danger? Would they come back for assistance if they found something dangerous? Or had she been left behind to keep them safe? Had they realized her fire could sometimes be unpredictable? Mira didn't know the answers to any of these questions, but she knew she couldn't doubt herself forever. She had to keep going and hope at some point things worked out right. Stopping herself was beginning to grow painful. Saria, Thorgrim, Jarlin, and Andorn had changed something in her, and she didn't know if she could change it back. Just as she reached the far side of the tent, she heard the sound of something in the snow. She stopped, stilling in an instant, and listened. Her dragon ears not the best, but her tongue flicking in and out, tasting and smelling the air at the same time. There were many wild animals in the forest, most hibernating or tucked up for the night, a solitary wolf among them. But the third time she tasted the air, she noticed the scent. Yarlin, the strongest of the three, back, Andorn and Saria with him. Instantly she relaxed, searching for them with her ears and the senses she could pick up on, until she saw them, the trio, coming through the trees, off to one side of the path they had left on. They spotted her only a fraction of a second later. "How did it go?" she asked as the three wandered up, and Yarlin went straight for the hut. "We didn't fight, lost the contact, but we think we know where he ended up," Saria said as they walked toward the tent flap. Andorn had gone inside too, but he'd looked around, noticed Thorgrim asleep near the door, and nodded his approval. "We should rest as best we can. I'll take the watch from—" "No, I will. You were up on watch last night," Saria said, cutting him off. "I've slept some too," Mira said, staying by the entrance. Andorn looked between them for a moment before he went deeper into the tent, wrapped his cloak around himself, and lay down with his pack for a pillow. Saria strode out into the snow again, turning her face up for a moment to let a flake land on the end of her nose. Mira found herself grinning at the sweet innocence in the act. Instantly, she knew she couldn't leave. Not this time. Not if they decided to stick together. And even if not all of them did, she hoped some of them would at least. She was tired of being alone. "Want to walk around together?" she asked. "Why not? I've had enough of being up in a tree by myself. It's not like I've walked miles already since I last slept. Maybe the mayor will buy me some new boots if I ask nicely enough," she said. Mira chuckled as they set off. Having already walked around the camp several times, she traced the same figure-of-8 pattern, walking in the footsteps she had already made, enjoying the appearance of Saria's beside hers. Both of them looked toward the horizon as they walked. "Can you elves really see a long way in the dark?" "Not in the pitch black, but we can see farther than most beings as long as there's at least a little light, like tonight. The snow reflects back a lot of light. It's never fully dark outside, and the snow makes even a cloudy night bright enough to see like day." "I can't even see that well in the day," Mira replied. "No, but you can probably smell us a mile off," Saria replied. Mira chuckled, having just had the same thought. "Yarlin needs a bath," they whispered together, before both of them laughed quietly again. It trailed off into a gentle silence, the wind also finally calming. Mira also thought she could detect a faint glow from the east. Was dawn finally on the way? She went around the route with Saria twice more before she was sure of it. The horizon was growing brighter, the sun beginning her journey for the day. Clouds still obscured the view for the most part, but even they had the occasional gap now. Stars showing on the west here and there, although they would be gone again soon, the rising sun too bright for them to be seen. Again, the lone wolf she detected earlier howled, and immediately Saria looked towards the sound, stopping her little march. "What?" Mira asked, sensing a sort of unease in her friend as she studied the edge of the forest. "I'm not sure, but it feels like that wolf is following me. I hear its howls wherever I go." "It's probably not the same wolf. There's loads of them in this country. If you're not used to them, they sound very similar," Mira said, but even she knew the words were hollow. It was the same wolf. They had been hearing it for a while. But the sound never came again, and eventually Saria carried on, shaking her head as if bringing herself out from under some kind of spell. They continued on as the day arrived, nothing happening around them but the slow awakening of the birds. They joined in song, the forest coming alive with sounds and sights. While Mira and Saria slowly patrolled, a female deer wandered just within sight, up the hill, trying to find something to graze upon. When it picked up on their scent in the breeze, it hurried on. Squirrels were next to emerge, and then scurry on, already on the hunt for food, one bold enough to dig up a nut stashed just off to the side of their clearing. For a second, they stopped to watch it, amused as it scrambled in the snow, chattering indignantly. While they were watching, Thorgrim emerged from the tent, yawning and stretching. The three of them patrolled around while he stretched, woke up properly, and then filled him in on the rest of the night.
"Sounds like we need some breakfast and a good discussion on how we're going to deal with this,"
Thorgrim said when they were done filling him in.
"I can't see good folk bullied in their own homes. My goddess would never allow such a crime to go unremedied."
"Let's start with breakfast. Cook enough bacon and I'm sure Yarlin will be out here in no time. One whiff of danger and Andorn will soon follow,"
Mira replied. Thorgrim chuckled and hurried off, clearly getting the idea. Saria's stomach rumbled a moment later, making it clear she agreed with the idea. Mira's legs ached from all the patrolling, but they carried on, knowing they were keeping the rest of the group safe. As they reached the back of the tent, Saria stopped, her eyes sweeping over a small part of the forest.
"What is it?"
Mira asked. Saria didn't respond at first, still looking intently in that direction.
"I'm not sure," she said a moment later. "Probably just another animal." "It's never just another animal."
Mira looked in the direction Saria was, and once again stuck out her tongue and inhaled.
"Nope, not just another animal. Get the others quick. We've got company."
Saria didn't hesitate, rushing off but doing so quietly. Mira carried on walking, keeping her tongue darting in and out, but staying natural. She didn't need to see the men out there to know that there were some. They were trying to fan out and surround them, but they got just a little too close before doing so. Grinning, Mira noticed her friends coming out of the tent and hut, all of them pulling on armor, doing up sword belts, or loading bows and crossbows. Andorn pulled up his cloak hood, covering his face, and walked into the forest. Hunkering down, he started to sneak around to get behind the men coming their way. Saria moved to Mira's left, heading around behind the tent and directly into danger. Yarlin took up position between the entrance to the tent and the hut, and Thorgrim strode to the other side of the tent, heading in a similar direction to Saria, the canvas between them. For a moment, Mira wasn't sure what part to play in all this. She knew she had to be careful with her abilities in magic. She couldn't set the trees alight. Even in this weather, they could burn. Instead, she would have to be very careful. Jogging, she went to join Thorgrim and Saria, but she hung back between them and pointed out the direction men were approaching from. As soon as Saria spotted someone, she fired. Thorgrim did the same a short while later. 7 men appeared in total, all of them wading through the undergrowth and snow, many with swords, but a few with long-ranged weapons. Mira picked the bowman to her left and concentrated. Just like the sneak from the day before had shot a small, magical star-like object towards Saria, 3 now left Mira's fingertips, flying through the forest and smacking into the chest of her target. He reeled backwards, but soon recovered. At the same time, the other ranger fired his bow, the arrow narrowly missing Thorgrim. If Mira's companions hit their chosen targets, she didn't notice, everyone continuing on. Mira tried to decide what to do next, Saria already notching another arrow and firing to the nearest thug. She hit, getting him through his sword-bearing shoulder and almost making him drop his weapon. He grunted and hesitated. Mira stepped back, focusing, then dodging as the archer she had attacked loosed another arrow at her. It missed. For a moment, she waited for Thorgrim to shoot with his crossbow. He caught another in the side. The rest of the men rushed them, and Saria and Thorgrim started to fall back to shield behind Yarlin. Mira remembered the little flame they would leave exposed, however, and Andorn's warning. The thugs were unlikely to open the door, but a part of her didn't want to take the risk. Closing her eyes again, she took a deep breath and concentrated. A moment later, she opened her eyes, and a ray of cold zipped out of her fingers, hitting the chest of the man as he stepped in range. It also caught the edge of another, freezing them momentarily. Taking another few steps back, Mira drew her quarterstaff. She pulled it out just in time to block the attack of the nearest fighter. As she deflected it, she whirled back a little farther, and Saria reappeared at her side, sticking an arrow in her attacker with her bare hand. "Mira, fall back to Yarlin and Thorgrim's side," she said, but Mira shook her head. Instead, she stood her ground and exhaled her fiery breath in an arc in front of her.
"Damn it, sorcerer!"
Yarlin could be heard yelling as he and Thorgrim rushed to just the other side of the tent, bringing their line of defense forward and ensuring none of the men could circle around behind Mira and Saria. Fighting on two fronts, they worked as pairs, one ranged fighter to one hand-to-hand fighter. As Thorgrim chanted something, Mira suddenly felt she could move faster, as if she could focus more clearly. As she was attacked again, 2 fighters now before her, Mira exhaled again and scorched the nearest fighter. Saria continued to hang back off of her shoulder, her arrows heading beyond the fight, towards an archer paused by the edge of the tent and using it for cover. Saria's first arrow missed, but her second found its mark as Mira dodged and weaved between the 2 swordsmen trying to hit her, taking another hit against her quarterstaff. A small flake of wood chipped off, flying up into the air, but it didn't harm anyone. Instead, she managed to strike one of the men, catching his arm with an almighty crack. With a broken-off arrow in the other's shoulder, he wavered. Still, they had to fight on, shouts coming from the other side of the tent. Suddenly, Yarlin cheered. Unable to work out why, Mira could only hope that they dealt with one of the thugs as Saria took an arrow herself. Distracted by the commotion, Mira felt one of the swords slice across her thigh, drawing blood and making her wince. She roared fire in response, now even angrier. The already wounded fighter caught a light, yelping as he disengaged from the fight and tried to run. But he didn't get very far before Saria put him out of his misery, shooting him through the heart. "Nice shot," Mira yelled. "How about you do that first next time?" "I'll try," she called back, getting to her feet again, another arrow already in her bow. Not long after, Yarlin let out another roar of approval, and Saria refocused on the archer she was challenging. Mira continued to spar with the fighter before her, grateful to be able to concentrate on only one opponent. This one had a shield and was better at blocking as Mira tried to breathe more fire over him. The clearing already stank of charred flesh, blood, and sweat, but Mira pushed the thoughts and memories it tried to invoke away and carry on. Suddenly, Thorgrim appeared with them, shooting a bolt into the side of her target. He screamed and tried to flee as well, but Mira finished him off, hitting him with a full blast of her fire. Cremated on the spot, he fell to the ground.
"Remind me not to wake you before you've had your beauty sleep,"
Thorgrim called as he reloaded his crossbow and aimed towards the final archer on their side of the tent. Before either he or Saria could fire again, Andorn appeared behind the archer and attacked with both daggers. The thug never knew what hit him before he had drawn his last breath. "Is that all of them?" Mira asked.
"Aye."
Yarlin appeared as well, puffing a blood splatter across his normally white trousers.
"And they owe me a new pair of trousers." "Not exactly a sensible color, is it?"
Thorgrim said.
"But I can lend aid regardless."
Thorgrim said a few words as he reached out his fingertips to touch the fabric on Yarlin's leg. Right before their eyes, the splatters faded, along with the light grass stain on the opposite leg. While Yarlin's mouth dropped open, Thorgrim walked away, chuckling to himself. He came over to Saria and Mira, placing a hand on both their shoulders. Right before he began to chant, Andorn quickly grabbed the arrow in Saria's shoulder and yanked it clean out of her. She gasped, her pain turning to surprise as the healing power from Thorgrim acted on the wound. At the same time, the cut on Mira's thigh healed up, leaving only a rent in the fabric and a small blood stain to show for all the damage she'd taken. The wound on Saria's shoulder was deeper, however, and it took Thorgrim longer to heal her up, having to repeat the chant a couple more times. Eventually, she nodded and rotated her arm, checking it was as good as new. "I must admit," Mira said, "having a cleric around makes a big difference. I hope you're not planning on finding some temple to settle down in." Thorgrim shook his head, muttering while she and Saria tipped their heads back and laughed, the only ones who knew what had happened the previous morning.